Well, hello, everyone. It's 6 o'clock, so I will go ahead and get started. First, can I get a thumbs up that all of you can hear me? I see lots of raised hands. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. Okay, raised hands is it. Thanks, Kat, for letting me know. Well, thanks for joining me this evening. We're going to cover the Affordable Housing Program resources and benefits. So hang tight with me. It's kind of awkward because it's not an interactive presentation. And so I'm just going to kind of go over things and hopefully you can see what I'm going over. And if not, please raise your hand so that I can address the issue. Or put something in the question and answer, and I will address the issue there too. All right, it looks like most everyone who signed up is here. So I am going to just kind of go over our agenda for this evening. Our agenda includes a snapshot of the affordable housing in Bend, Bend's affordable housing tools, and Bend's affordable housing resources. And then we will go into the grants and loans policy. And then we will jump into CDBG consolidated plan goals, CDBG national objectives, and then CDBG project activities and questions, and then we will adjourn. So if you are here only to participate with regards to affordable housing funding, then you probably won't need to participate in the last half hour that we cover. And I'll give question and answer kind of breakups throughout the agenda so that you all can see what we have. And have that opportunity to ask questions without covering too much information. So please just type in questions as we go, and I will try and address them as we move along. So I'm Rachel Egan-Baker. I'm the Affordable Housing Coordinator for the City of Bend. And today we're covering affordable housing information for developments and public service activities in 2022 to 2023. So yes, if you are here, this is for funding that is not available until July 1st of 2022. Under the affordable housing program in Bend, the City of Bend's comprehensive plan is where you will find the definition of affordable housing. And in the case of dwelling units for sale, affordable housing means housing in which the mortgagee interest tax, insurance, and any kind of association fee cannot be more than 30% of a gross annual income for a family at 80% AMI. And that 80% AMI is based on HUD's income limits for the Bend metropolitan statistical area. In the case of dwelling units for rent, affordable means housing for which the rent constitutes no more than 30% of a household's income for a family at 60% AMI. And that's based on HUD's income limits for the Bend MSA. What does that look like? Essentially, this is kind of where AMI levels are in Bend, and this makes some assumptions. It's based on an assumption of a 10% down payment at 3.9 interest over 30-year mortgage with no HOA credit score and no debt. So as you can see, our median home price at $650,000 way exceeds what a lot of our community makes for income, or households make for income. So at 100% AMI, you're looking at $80,000 a year. At 80% AMI, you're looking at $64,000 a year. And at 60% AMI, you're looking at $48,000 a year. So the City of Bend has some affordable housing tools that are available to all of you to apply for. There are policy and code tools. There's surplus land. There's the property tax exemptions. And there's the Affordable Housing Fund. And then there are state and federal funding tools. So we're going to cover those in today's presentation. As you can see, in 2015, we had a significant housing shortage, and we have just scratched the surface on addressing that. And so the City of Bend continues to make housing a priority. One of the tools is the expedited review and permitting process. And that means that if you are constructing affordable housing at those AMI levels that are appropriate, then your permits get seen and reviewed faster. In addition, we have system development charge exemptions. There are a few other cities that have those, and essentially, if you are planning on constructing affordable housing, then the City of Bend and the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee will review your proposed development and consider exempting your project from paying system development charges. We also have city code incentives. We have ADUs incentives, parking bonus incentives, cottage code incentives, and density bonus incentives. In addition, there is a multifamily property tax exemption for developments that also receive state and federal funding. The city also attempts to surplus any property that it has. However, that hasn't happened in quite a while because most of the property that is available to surplus has been surplused. Here are just a couple, lot examples. This lot on Forbes Road that was surplused, Housing Works just developed into apartments. This is like right by Lava Lanes and across the street from Bend Fire Department on Northeast 15th. So these are just examples of property that the city has provided at cost to affordable housing development. There is also the City of Bend's Affordable Housing Fund. Council adopted this fund in 2006. It is a 1/3 of 1% fee on the total building permit valuation. And the fees address the lack of housing, low vacancy rates, and increase in home prices. And essentially, this goes to our affordable housing fund that we put out in these processes that you're beginning to learn about. This is about $1 million a year. It's looking on track to be about that much, but if you're interested in applying for that, then that's why you're here this evening. There are also state and federal resources for affordable housing. That includes community development block grant funding. And this not only provides funding for housing and housing development, but it also provides funding for public services, such as case management services, or if you are a food program and you need to hire a chef, it could potentially fund something like that. So these are public services dollars in addition to housing development funds. The state has a low-income housing tax credit that it's administered through Oregon Housing and Community Services. It's highly competitive, and it's an RFP process for tax credits of affordable housing investments. The state also has a local innovation and fast track housing program. It is administered through OHCS as well, and it is another competitive RFP process. So the City of Bend provides resources for public services and developments. If it is a public service, then it is given in the form of a grant. If it is not a public service, then it is given in the form of a loan. Those loans typically are for, if it's home buyer assistance, such as down payment assistance, it is non-amortizing for 30 years and paid in year 31 at an amortized rate at 5%. And then that payoff happens after 10 years. If it is an acquisition of land, it's a 20-year loan at 0% interest with terms. If it is an acquisition of land for a land trust, it is 20-year at 0% interest with terms revisited in year 20. If it is acquisition, construction, or rehabilitation, or clearance of land or development of infrastructure, it is 40-year amortizing at 1%, or it could also be, there's like a choice here, 40-year interest for the first 10 years, amortizing at 3% interest, or 40-year interest only for the first 10 years, and then amortizing at 3% interest. Shelters or service providers that don't generate any funding from the housing they're providing are loans that are forgiven. They are only due upon sale, refinance, or non-compliance, and they are at 0% interest. All loan recipients can request a shorter repayment timeframe without prepayment penalty, and developments paying within 5 years may qualify for 0% interest with the approval of the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee or City Council. At any time in the application process, it can be proposed for different loan terms. However, you have to make sure that you include that in your application for the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee to consider. To be eligible for affordable housing funding or CDBG funding, you must be applying for a project or a development or an activity that is considered one of the community's consolidated plan goals. The consolidated plan is a 5-year document that sets the goals for the city. Our new consolidated plan will be developed next year. So keep an eye out for that. Those goals currently are to create and preserve affordable rental housing, provide support to necessary public services, create and preserve affordable home ownership, assist homeless with shelter and services, and infrastructure. That infrastructure needs to be in conjunction with affordable housing development or for economic development in low to moderate income neighborhoods. In order to be eligible for CDBG and Affordable Housing Fund dollars, you must also meet a national objective. An example of a national objective is low and moderate income housing. That means families and individuals whose incomes do not exceed 80% of the median income of the area involved as determined by HUD. Or you must provide an LMI, low and moderate income benefit, such as a job to low and moderate income persons. Or you must serve a population that is considered low and moderate income. That could be survivors of domestic or sexual assault. That could be senior citizens. That could be persons experiencing homelessness. So it has to be clientele that are considered low and moderate income clientele. And finally, if it's an area that's been determined slum or blight or urban renewal, all of these require a designation or a declaration, and that currently does not apply to the city of Bend. All right, we have a question kind of time period here. I just wanted to offer anyone the opportunity to enter a question in the Q&A, or if they don't have any questions, then we can keep moving forward. I'm not seeing any questions being entered, so I will keep us moving forward. I will say we're going to cover primarily community development block grant information at the moment. And so if you do not intend on applying for community development block grant information, then you certainly don't need to keep listening, and I will follow up with you in follow-up emails with additional information. I do see a question from a participant. Do nonprofits have to have 3 years audited financials to apply? We're going to cover that, Dawn. And yes, it is required that they are, that any nonprofit that receives over a certain amount of money, I believe it's like $750,000, needs to have audited financials. If not, you need to have some kind of financial review, but we'll cover that in going over the CDBG requirements. So if you are developing low or moderate income housing, rents in CDBG assisted rental projects must be set to levels which are affordable to low and moderate income persons. In addition, households may not pay more than 30% of their income and each project must be undertaken in such a manner that is to ensure that rents are truly affordable to low and moderate income persons. Not only do you need to, or I should say, low and moderate income housing includes home repair, home ownership repair, home rehabilitation, home reconstruction of owner-occupied units, or standard manufactured home units. You can also do land acquisitions or home purchases. So those are just a few examples of low and moderate income housing type of developments or projects that you can apply for. Finally, if you are doing a multiple unit project, the LMI households must occupy any one unit structure. So if you're building a home and it's just a single home, then any funding you receive that is CDBG, that home must be an LMI family. If you are creating a 2-unit structure, such as a duplex, then one of the 2 units must have a household of low and moderate income. Anything greater than 2 units, such as a triplex or 4plex or a multifamily unit, then 51% of those that occupy the structure must be low and moderate income households. All right, so if you are looking for doing economic development, that includes things such as job training, peer counseling, childcare, and transportation. If anyone included, or at least 51% are benefiting from the activity are low and moderate income. Or it could be economic activity designed to create or retain jobs. And that too must benefit at least 51% of folks that are low and moderate income. There are also public benefit standards if you are doing economic development. And these are kind of really detailed information. I'm putting it out there for you to see on this slide, and I will distribute these slides to all of you that are in attendance. However, if you do plan on doing an economic development activity, it does not fall within the consolidated plan goals. And so your priority would probably be pretty low. It's also very complicated. So I would also want you to touch base with me about kind of the technical difficulties of presenting or proposing such a project. Low and moderate income clientele. 51% of those served must be low and moderate income. Activities must benefit clientele presumed to be principally low and moderate income, such as elderly persons, people experiencing homelessness, migrant farm workers. You have to make sure that if you are serving a low and moderate income clientele, you are documenting family size and income. You have income eligibility requirements limiting to LMI persons, or be of such a nature and in such a location, such as an area of town that has been designated a slum or of a low and moderate income area, that it can be presumed that clients are low and moderate income. So again, if you are only applying for the affordable housing funding this year, we are using Neighborly Online as our application portal. So when you apply, you will be brought to this application website. And this is the opportunity for you to kind of see what that looks like so that you know you're in the right place. When you go there, you will want to register. I see some questions. Would foster children and their families be presumed LMI? It would kind of depend on how they're being served. So if it was, I wouldn't consider foster families to be presumed low and moderate income. No. I would potentially presume foster children to be low and moderate income, but it would probably be their biological parents that would be presumed to be low and moderate income, not the families that host them. I see another question. What is the time frame for calculating LMI? It is the past 12 months, correct? Any additional questions? All right. Somehow we slipped back into, oops, no, we didn't. Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll keep moving forward. So a CDBG project that is proposed must include a project summary, a statement of the work, and the time of performance. It must have like a clear project schedule with milestones and a budget. That project summary needs to kind of include agency information, background and mission statements. If you are applying for CDBG dollars, you have to be a nonprofit. And you need to have articles of incorporation and board minutes, just kind of some standard things before you might want to consider applying for CDBG dollars. And these are the things that you will see in that neighborly application online that are requested, such as your DUNS number or your business registration with the state of Oregon that indicates your nonprofit status. You'll also want to make sure that there is nothing in SAMS.gov that indicates that you have federal debarment, because then we can't give you any federal dollars. Your time of performance must indicate that you're shovel ready and that spending projections will be checked and possibly funding's lost if not met. So those are just kind of the things you want to make sure you have dialed in when you apply. Oh, shoot, this is just running without me. Your projects need to make sure that they meet one of those national objectives. Your financials will be requested when you submit for reimbursement. And that is kind of important to realize that this is not a pay before you do type of program. This is a reimburse you for expense pay type of program. So if you don't have the capital to get things out and then get reimbursed, then you don't have the capital to receive CDBG dollars as a public service. There are differences if you're acquiring land with CDBG dollars. Those fundings usually are available when the sale occurs, or if there is a construction loan, which isn't available in CDBG dollars, but is available in Affordable Housing Fund. Those typically also are available when the sale closes. So there are exceptions to that reimbursement, but for the most part, all public services are reimbursed. So when you ask for those reimbursements, we need to see receipts, we need to see invoices, we need to see payroll records, we need to see timesheets, we need those financial audits. And that's, again, only if you make over receive over $750,000 in federal funding However, we will need to see financial reviews if you don't get financial audits completed. So these are kind of some of those measures and outcomes that we look at when you are meeting those national objectives. You must create either a suitable living environment, provide decent housing, or create economic opportunities. You also need to make sure that you are, and some of those public services would fall under creating suitable living environments. You also need to make sure that you are either creating affordability, sustainability, or accessibility. So sustainability also includes some of those public services. And some of the indicators that we'll be asking for is leveraged funds, number of persons in the household, businesses, units, beds, income levels, race and ethnicity, and disability data. I see a question asking, would SUD demographic be considered LMI? Let me think about that before I answer. I think it would be. So I do think it would be considered LMI. However, I do think like a limited clientele, you would still need to make sure that you were collecting all that information, and then 51% of those served could be documented as LMI. All right, so next slide. If you're applying, you need to make sure that your program meets program management standards for receiving CDBG dollars. That means internal controls, accounting records. All accounting records must be supported by source documentation. It has to be allowable costs under oh goodness, I can't even remember the statute, but we will definitely cover that. There needs to be cash depositories and CDBG real property. Also, if you're acquiring real property with CDBG dollars, anything over $25,000 really becomes property of the federal government. And so you need to make sure that you're meeting like those federal standards, not just after the land acquisition, but until that loan is paid back. Are CDBG funds ideal for small nonprofits that work with eligible clients looking to cover staff costs? Or is this more for larger organizations? No, CDBG dollars are ideal for small nonprofits that benefit eligible clients looking to cover staff costs. That's exactly what CDBG dollars are for. However, the problem is with CDBG dollars is that they are a refund. So the organization needs to have the financial capacity to pay your employees, and then the CDBG dollars are reimbursed. And so if it's a small nonprofit that doesn't have that capital, then it does make it a little bit more difficult. So in addition to those program management internal controls, that means you need to have an organizational chart, a definition of duties, a system of authorization and supervision, adequate separation of duties, hiring and compensation policies, secure storage of all accounting records, periodic review of financial records, and a policy for personally identifiable information and how you protect it. Program management accounting records. This is that statute I was referring to earlier. You need to understand 2 CFR 200, all the audit requirements that come with it, and when they are exceptions. You have to have chart of accounts, cash receipts journals, cash disbursement journals, payroll journals, general ledgers, and capacity. And there's that capacity requirement. You have to have enough staff to do all those things. Any additional questions? This is kind of where CDBG seems very overwhelming. And I'm not saying that it's not. However, I am saying I present you with all this information very early on for you to consider if your organization has the capacity to do this work and to have the administrative capacity to keep all those documentations for the federal government, because I do look at them all and I do request them all as we award the funding and as the process to kind of get you those dollars to make sure your project or your personnel that you are hiring don't have any hiccups and that you get your reimbursement back as requested. So it's very daunting at the beginning, but I do a lot of hand-holding through the process. So I don't want to scare you away from applying. I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to keep moving on. So that program management allowable cost must be necessary, reasonable, and directly related to the CDBG funding. That means we need to see how the money you receive benefits the low and moderate income household or person. And that nexus has to be there, whether you're paying for a staff person that provides them assistance or care, whether you're paying for structure for them to move into, whether you're paying for operating costs of a facility that helps them, such as a low barrier shelter. We have to see that direct benefit to the low and moderate income person. It needs to be authorized by the city of Bend. It needs to be a consistently treated expenditure. It has to be allowable under CDBG, under that 2 CFR 200 document, and it has to net all of applicable credits. In other words, you cannot make a profit from costs charged to CDBG. And it cannot be prohibited under federal, state, or local regulations. Just to go over what is prohibited, it cannot be used for buildings for the general conduct of government. It cannot be used for general government expenses. It cannot be used for political activities. It cannot be used to purchase construction equipment. It cannot be used to purchase personal property, furnishings, fixtures, or motor vehicles. It cannot be used for operating and maintaining expenses. It cannot be used for new housing construction, and it cannot be used for income payments. Income payments are a little nuanced. It's different than emergency payments. So income payments such as like TANF wouldn't be allowable through the CDBG program. Not that TANF has anything to do with CDBG, it's just that's a type of income payment. However, an emergency payment would be such as a rental assistance, but there are some strict guidelines around that rental assistance, or utility assistance, again, strict guidelines around that. So those payments could be for housing, food, and clothing only. Program management of loan servicing. All loans must be clear and loan information must be easily accessible. That's essentially it. If there is any money, $25,000 or over provided, that real property or acquired again becomes property of the federal government. And so it must meet that national objective of serving an LMI person or LMI household as long as that funding remains out there or that loan is not paid back to the city. And when those loans are paid back to the city, that payment goes back into our affordable housing programs and goes right back out the door. So it's constantly circulating. So legal compliance. If you receive CDBG dollars, you have to meet all the legal requirements, including procurement and contracting, property management and disposition. You have to abide by fair housing and equal opportunity laws, labor standards. Any project that utilizes labor greater than $2,000 must meet prevailing wage requirements. You must meet all lead-based paint requirements. Political activity is prohibited, and you cannot have a conflict of interest. In addition, all activities and developments must be legally compliant with NEPA, and then an environmental review is conducted. So even if you are just providing a service, I do an environmental review of that service you provide. I look at where the services are provided. I make sure that they meet national floodplain requirements. In addition to airport requirements, it's a very heavy lift administratively, but I do want you to know that each kind of activity and development ranges in how extensive that environmental review is. Anything involving real estate or any moving of dirt or creation of like dust, essentially, if there's some type of rehab, that would require a more extensive environmental review than a public service. The other legal compliant issue is under the Uniform Relocation Act. Any kind of real property acquisition requires that the person the property is being acquired from is made whole, essentially. So if someone's selling their property, they're typically made whole by the sale. But if it's a project where you have to move someone out of their home, then we make sure that you are meeting their requirement of moving them into a space that is comparable to the space that they had. All right, we're wrapping up. Again, I just wanted to show you this Neighborly online application and what it looks like. You'll need to register, and then you should be able to access the application after you register. In addition, this little great tool here allows you to access this application in any language. So it's a great software that really allows accessibility for all kinds of languages. And so we're looking forward to getting some different applications this year. In addition, we monitor to make sure that everyone is meeting the Affordable Housing Fund and CDBG requirements. Our housing director is Lynn McConnell, and I am the Affordable Housing Coordinator. If you've registered for this presentation, in follow-up, you will receive an email Friday with the allocation process schedule, the online application link, and information on a virtual application review meeting scheduled for Thursday, October 21st at 3 p.m. That meeting will allow all of you to see the application online, and I can answer questions that you might have after you have seen it online that come up through your application process. And this is the last opportunity for you all to ask me any questions. Does anyone else have questions? Oh. Looks like I've answered all the questions that have been entered. So you're all welcome to go. That was kind of a quick meeting, but I covered as best I could, and hopefully I didn't talk too fast. Again, look for that email on Friday. And I will end the presentation. Thank you.